Picks and bans, game number 4. Pittsburgh Knights on the timer. And we've seen a number of bans. You can see the top SPL bans down there. King Arthur banned out 70% of the time. I think that'll still be in fashion. The Freya ban, though, I think that has kind of gone the way of the dodo. She's not exactly overpowered. Still certainly a nice selection, though. Chronos seems to have usurped her as far as the go-to magical carry. That said, our bans have come in. No Naja, no Fafnir, says Pittsburgh Knights, and Team Dignitas will retort with a Shibalanke ban and a King Arthur ban.
I kind of want to see either a first pick Achilles or Bologna or Merlin finally making his way into play, and Zyrhoes at that's going to have a chance to really show us what he's capable of. But I love the immediate response pick from Dignitas, stripping away that Achilles from Deathwalker. Deathwalker has definitely had some high moments on the Achilles in this set so far, so
for sure.
Take him off the pick while he's hot.
Yeah, you certainly want to cool that guy down. Achilles going to be going the way of Dignitas, and now one more choice there. As I said before, I don't mind if a Bologna winds up on this squad. It'd be certainly nice. I want to see Variety play something besides the Camazotz. I think that the Camazotz is interesting. He's a lane bully, and then the team fight is a little bit rough if you're not diving. But last game, we didn't even get to see him be a lane bully.
I almost want to see EmilZy look for the Terra, though.
Okay.
Also, I think that Terra has been evenly contested pick between both of these teams. I know that EmilZy is more than capable of letting that Terra ride. I also think that the walls could pose some issues for Jingwei, at least throughout the laning phase. Even though we haven't really seen supports really hover duo all that often, it's mostly just been Vote and Ataraxia kind of left to their own devices. But even against the Achilles, for example, I still think that some of the monoliths that Atara could bring into the battlefield could pose a lot of issues for Dignitas when they're trying to, levy for position.
Bologna selected here by Pittsburgh Knights, a 72% win rate for the Weapon Master, and that's good. 72% of the time you go out there, you win. That's insane. So Pittsburgh Knights going to go with her next to Merlin, a character who, although to be honest, Merlin has seen some ups and downs, banned often, and when he is played, doesn't auto-win, so an interesting choice.
But Merlin is one of those gods where, say we get to that 25-plus minute mark and Dignitas are in the lead, if they're not careful with the engagement, Merlin destroys the Titan, and that amount of objective shred, I think, is more than enough to warrant Merlin for our first pick here, but I definitely want to see some heavy crowd control as a result for Pittsburgh Knights, because they're going to need to keep this Merlin safe, because you bet that Zyrhoes is going to be the target. Yeah,
that fire stance can certainly pump out a ton of damage, both against players and against objectives. 30 seconds left of the bank time here for PK. Got a mid laner. They've got likely a solo side. We'll see if they go jungle, carry, or support here. Right now, still thinking it over. Dignitas, they've got some aggressive picks. So a Carninos will be the choice, likely for Vote here for Pittsburgh Knights.
I like this from Vote, because the Carninos, I don't think we've seen enough action in duo lane, and I think that now Vote is tired of kind of just playing the farm game with Ataraxia. He's looking for something that he can try and sufficiently punish this Jingwei with, whether or not she has that airstrike available. Even if you're able to force that ultimate from the Jingwei, it would give adapting some early game openings to maybe try and develop a lead from duo, and hopefully have that take the trickle down effect over into the mid lane.
Ratatasker is going to be their turn pick here for Team Dignitas. I love that choice. Qvofred on the Ratatasker, never something to really complain about. Of course, also, again, ambiguity afoot. Could find its way into the solo lane. Achilles could be in the hands of the jungler, but I do like it the other way around at the moment. I think that Achilles can just do a little bit more out of that solo lane.
I see Ratatasker, and I immediately think Merlin Killer for Dignitas. Whether that's Qvofred or Variety's choice for the solo lane or jungle, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that I'm certain of is that Dignitas are going to look to collapse Zyrhoes fairly early on through the Cosmos, such an effective method to force out that Merlin blink early on, and then that would just open up the gateway for an Achilles, Jingwei, and possibly still an option here as well for either a Kumbhakarna or a Terra to come into play.
You know, it's interesting looking at the big picture here and seeing this Arachne ban from Dignitas. Adapting must have really been playing a lot of Arachne behind the scenes. We've seen it in the Pro League a couple of times from him, and now we see it banned over and over again. It's been played in this set. I think that Arachne is a much bigger priority pick than we have seen as of late.
Well, it also depends on the teams and the players. When you think about adapting, he's shown so much prevalence in favor of 4 gods like the Kali, Baka,
the basic
even the
characters.
Arachne. Exactly. And even now, I think that there's still a threat of a Bakasura coming into play. Baka's also still being on the board, but Baka's maybe not as ideal when dealing with the Jingwei because she will just be able to agility out.
Yeah, just get on out of there. Dignitas, though, trying to select something. Most likely a mid laner needs to be part of it, and it will be a Zeus here. Interesting. Z-Man Senior, not something that we see very often. I know Agro's happy off camera. We'll see how he fares here against the Pittsburgh Knight combo. How do you think?
I think that might have just been the best pick Dignitas could have done for their mid lane. It's got efficient setup already between the Ratatoskr and the Achilles, but more importantly, it's got the area denial. It's going to prevent Merlin, I think, from being able to free cast as openly into the backline as Pittsburgh Knights were probably originally intending. And not only that, but if you Lightning Storm on top of Bologna's Eagles Rally, sure, you're missing out on a little bit of damage, but you're also preventing Pittsburgh Knights from looking for that engagement inside of all the protections.
That's a huge deal right there, Taco. Just kind of negating what Bologna can do. Really, really intelligent. Pittsburgh Knights going to go with Nemesis. She can certainly eat Zeus for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And Geb will roll on through here for Pittsburgh Knights. Nice defensive composition with a little bit of Merlin sprinkled in to go nuts. Last selection here for Dig. I thought it was coming through. My bad.
Trying to read things a little bit too early on. It's got to be a support play. I'm pretty certain that that's going to be an Achilles intended for variety. It's probably going to fare better, I think, Achilles versus the Bologna as opposed to a Ratatoskr versus Bologna matchup. Rat being a little bit too squishy, perhaps, and Deathwalker. You don't want to let Deathwalker have the chance to kind of bully out the lane.
For sure.
Because even in Game 3, despite the fact that Dignitas ultimately won it out, it still was so much pressure against variety, even with the Camazotz, and Camazotz arguably having better survivability than Ratatoskr even.
Yeah, it's certainly, it's different, and it's certainly up there. The last selection with the Khepri, you want survivability. Can literally bring you back, well, maybe not back from the dead, back from purgatory for sure. So Khepri going to be selected here for Team Dignitas. A little bit of protection here for the Zeus Man and the Jingwei. Ratatoskr and Achilles will provide some damage as well. Pittsburgh Knights on the other side, as I said, rather defensive. An aggressive choice for vote in that long lane. And Bologna can kind of do whatever the hell she wants. Merlin going to bring some power as well.
This feels a lot, though, like the first time we actually saw these teams making adaptive responses throughout the drafting phase. I don't think that Dignitas originally envisioned themselves as taking a Zeus and the Khepri, but they were just appropriate response picks to what Pittsburgh Knights were trying to run. And I love seeing these little adjustments that teams tend to make throughout.
It is a lot of fun to kind of see everything come together. Game number 3 already in the books. We're heading on to game number 4. Dignitas on match point. Finch and Agro, take us away.
Be happy to, Tom. You and Taco, thanks, guys, on the desk. And now the question for me becomes, this truly is the overarching question now, how do Knights recover? How do you shake off that kind of a loss and get back into this game?
I'm just hoping that Roe had a great joke walking in the booth, you know, something to break the ice back, because that is a tough one to lose. No doubt about it. I don't know. I do like their composition.
Yes.
I think the Geb selection is exactly what Dignitas were looking for, and so to take that away I think is very smart. It is pretty counterintuitive with the way that these supports have been playing early on, though, is very aggressively.
Yes.
And that isn't really the case now with this Geb for sure, but...
That's a good point. Are they suddenly going to go back to dual lane with these Guardians? Or
maybe. I don't know. Trix is still over here on the right-hand side,
You're
as is EmilZy. But overall, I think that both teams had a pretty good change up in the drafts, but I gotta say I like Dignitas a little bit more. It just feels a little bit more cohesive, I would say, than Pittsburgh Knights.
Yes, you can see exactly like what the game plan is, right, from this Dignitas one. And for Pittsburgh Knights, it feels like they have some good pieces. You're just not entirely sure how they're going to be lining up for each other. And a lot of the question marks for me are around adapting on this Nemesis. This is a pick that he likes to play. Certainly, a Nemesis is good. She can build a lot like the way he already likes to build when he plays like Arachnes and other stuff like that anyway. He doesn't have to change too much of that if he doesn't want to. But who is it that she's really going to be causing a lot of problems for? Is it Hurriwind on this
Yes,
Zeus?
it's Hurriwind. Yeah, he's going to get ulted and die because that's really what Zeus does. The question is how many people can he kill at the exact same time is really the question mark for Hurriwind. And I think that you could go an early Winged Blade here. Winged Blade has always been really good on Zeus because it gives him a little bit of extra mobility, some health that he really needs, so some just good stats, and in the slow immunity passive is obviously great up against the Nemesis. I wouldn't mind seeing that for Hurriwind pretty early on in this game, but Zeus is another one of those characters like a lot of majors right now where I just feel like he wants so many items, it's hard to pick the right one for the correct moment.
Right. His cup runneth over, it feels like at times, as both these Guardians are over here in the solo lane just kind of hanging out. So this isn't nearly the aggressive steal your blue buff kind of thing that EmilZy was doing on this Urquette. It feels like still just trying to figure out where to put them in the early game. But I talked about how maybe the Knights had to recover mentally. How much is there to say for how fired up Dignitas must be, too? We kind of saw them all popping at the end of that. Nate, you could see him screaming, Qvo as well. I mean, winning like that really does kind of gas the team.
It really does, but at the same time, that's where Biggie's got to come in and say, hey guys, don't forget, we were getting crushed right before that happened. So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, a dose of reality, basically, to make sure you understand that that is going to be a situation where we got to play better than we did in that game despite the victory.
And I think they've got the tools to do it. Qvofred on this Ratatosker, to me, is already just such a big adjustment, at least to what we saw work well for the Knights. They were able to have pressure right from like level 5 or so, and that's where Rat thrives. It feels so difficult to get away from his ultimate. He has the stun as well, the dash to close the distance. Those tools, before you have a lot of damage, where you have a lot of relics, they're so strong right at that point. So that's right where Knights had some success, and now they have a good answer.
And it should be right about now that he's finishing off that Acorn so that he can start putting pressure on to Zyrhoes in particular, who's sitting at boots 1, even adapting backs pretty early on to make sure that he's full health and ready to fight should the time come. Qvo has, just now finished that full Acorn. I was going to say, usually by the time you get your second speed, it's ready to go. And indeed, he is ready. I wonder if even a gank onto Deathwalker could be in the cards. Only level 3, so not a lot of damage by way of his abilities, but just having 50 power available to you and a bunch of movement speed by finishing off that Acorn is such a big deal.
It really is. It's just hard for anyone else to match exactly that same kind of impact. So the Knights are going to have to be on the watch about where Qvo is. Now remember, the trade-off that had to be made in this one was that Dignitas had to ban Shibalanke and King Arthur, right, from that second pick spot. That's why Merlin has made it through. So that means there is a lot of pressure on Zyrhoes, to be able to bring this Merlin pick to fruition. And I think Merlin's good, but I don't know if he's evergreen. He doesn't fit into every composition or always work for you. He can be punished some. How do you see Zyrhoes having to play this?
Yeah, I think Merlin is usually pretty good in most compositions. He does need a little bit of protection. But I think that he can do a lot in just about any comp. I don't mind first picking Merlin by any stretch. Sure. I am a little bit surprised, though, that with how well he played that your mid in Game 2, it was open this time around, and he didn't end up going for it. But there was potential for that in my mind. I just think that he decides to play it a little bit more conventional this time around. And this is kind of the risk that he's taking. If Pittsburgh Knights win this game and Zyrhoes plays very well, it makes picks and bans nearly impossible for Dignitas in the next game, where you can't really afford to take away all the picks you want to take away, and Merlin, and Yorn from Zyrhoes. So this is kind of the inherent risk, where you're not playing the pick that scared Dignitas in Game 2 and Game 3, but it makes you really hard to pick and ban against in the next few.
If they can make it to that Game 5, that feels like the question that's out there in front now for the Knights. And how is this game going to go? Because we had, a 46-minute game, then a 59-minute game, but then all of a sudden, it was less than 30, right? When Dig closed it out in game number 3. All of a sudden, the game was cut short and, clearly caught a lot of us off guard that suddenly, things were over that fast. But can the Knights sort of regroup and play into a more traditional game this time? Can they afford to drag it another 50 minutes or another 50-minute match, rather, in this one? It kind of feels like the question to me.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about him. I mean, this is a team with multiple world champions on it.
That's a good point. You're right.
You've got actually, it's only one world champion now that I count the rings, unless you count Zyrhoes' coaching ring, in which case...
You're right. That's not a good point. You're wrong.
Unlucky for me.
Lucky for me that I get to come back and roast you.
Right. Well, you were so on top of it that I was wrong right away. That
I
you deserved to be able to do this to me.
Yeah, if I have to parse everything you say, we'll never get through a cast. So I gotta sometimes I gotta autopilot gas you.
Well played.
Yeah.
Not bad. Yeah, those mid camps are going to Hurriwind, man. 3 stacks of detonate is those are his. You don't get to out secure.
Oh, I forgot. Zeus is in this game, and as chair 1, it should be my job to get you to talk about how great Zeus is as often as possible.
Thank you. It's great. Yeah, it's really awesome.
What are some things Zeus does good? Does well.
Murders the opposition in style is the big one.
Well, up into the air goes Qvofred already, and this is perfect time for some of that Zeus damage. Qvofred finds first blood, but Deathwalker's here as well. Qvofred revived by Trixtank, but not sent particularly far. A sprint comes through, and that's enough. Qvofred's out of there.
Zyrhoes takes a little bit of extra poke, but that's what Zeus does. Fighting around mid camps is nearly impossible around him because he's got such great bounce targets there with the Orc, with the Harpies, and then the ultimate just covers such a big area. It clears everyone out of the way for Qvofred to get the ultimate and provides damage simultaneously, and that's really what it does. It's got much better late game than it used to. Now the early game isn't quite as potent, and you can't rely on just your base damage numbers. You really need to build power. That's a big reason why that old Wingblade build worked well for Zeus, because he didn't need to build that much actual power because his base damage was so high. So maybe that's why Hurriwind might not go for that sort of route. But overall, he's just consistent damage as long as you're able to hit Chain Lightning is the big one. Chain Lightning is where all of Zeus damage begins and ends.
That's exactly right. But you pointed out already, right? I'm a little bit surprised Knights wanted that fight. Not just because they're in a spot that you don't want to fight into a Zeus, but it's just that's the fight that this comp wants to take. I mean, the Ratatosker and the Zeus and the Khepri, I mean, they're happy to squabble exactly there in that exact time, and that timing in the game and itemization and positioning is exactly where they want to be.
And Zeus is just one of those characters that doesn't get played as much as it used to, so maybe you're not as used to not taking those fights against him. I know LG's played it a little bit, but that's not a whole lot of teams have outside of that, so it takes some time to readjust to those sorts of more unique play styles that characters like Zeus bring.
Can we take a moment just to enjoy that I think that everyone is playing a traditional thing in its traditional role this time? We don't get as much of that anymore. It's so open right now, which is actually a very good thing, of course.
Of course.
In Smite, that you can play so many things wherever you want to, as Ataraxia's ultimate forced out. But it is also kind of nice when you see it largely traditional. We still don't have the duo lane back to being 2 people over there, but everything else felt pretty normal.
Yeah, it's nice. I didn't mind seeing your mid though. It gave me some inspiration.
Of course, yeah.
Take it for a spin a little bit later on, and getting a chance to see Merlin in action. We haven't seen a whole lot of him quite yet. Is also something that I'm excited about in this composition, even if it isn't the weirdness that we've seen up until now.
It's like going back to your hometown, and it's nice for this night.
Yeah.
I don't want to stay here all the time, but it's nice.
I don't know. I could mess around with some Zeus Merlin in mid lane every game. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah,
I'm fine with those two.
Is the kind of lightning effect on his autos enough for you on Merlin?
Yes, it really does.
Yeah.
Okay, I am just a lightning stan in every way. Anything that has lightning, I think, is really cool automatically. So yes, just that on Merlin is enough for me. That's why I think Pele is so cool. Volcanic lightning is really awesome.
It's also a pretty good ability.
I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man, Finch. I see lightning, I upvote. Like it's really that simple for me.
And sometimes it is just that easy, so I'm right there with you. As Qvofred has the Crusher finish, Talaria boots for adapting to get him started, and hasn't had a chance yet, I imagine, to go back. Certainly not enough gold disparity to where he should be that far out in front of him, so Adapter probably just hasn't found the timing, and he'll be able to go back and finish maybe a Crusher of his own. Who knows? I
mean, he's down 600 gold right now. That first blood definitely a big part of it, but Qvo is just playing a character that roams the jungle quickly and gets opportunities like this.
Look at that vote. Dual lane's not so free. Good timing, waiting on the stun, but the ultimate there for him buys him some time. But they dash in, and they're able to get him very low, but he avoids the shots. He at least finds the return kill. That's about as good as Vote could hope for.
But that's still fine for Qvofred because he got the ultimate out from Vote. No purification beads from him, actually, it looks like, but still enough to force him back. And he's further ahead than Ataraxia, right? He's been getting all the solo farm, and he's further ahead than you. So getting that kill is a shutdown bonus in a way and keeps Vote off the map. And what I was going to say was Ratatosker ends up ganking duo a lot more than other junglers, and there's been 0 of those ganks so far in this set. So I was curious on whether or not Qvo was going to break that taboo and head on over there and hit the duo lane, and he's done it and netted himself a kill.
And for what it's worth for a vote, the old muscles hadn't atrophied yet. He was definitely ready still. He was patient on when to use the dash, had the ultimate right there at his feet as well at the tower to keep Qvofred from following him as soon as he would have liked to. That's why he ends up taking that extra tower shot. So that was done about as well as Vote could have asked for, just wasn't enough to get him out of there.
Dignitas still going to be playing around the mid lane for the most part in the early stages. Now Vote's going to have a bit of a deeper ward to help him out in that repeat
Gotta
scenario.
buy wards over here again, man.
So lame. Gotta spend 50 gold to see where anybody else is. What's that about? It's how everyone else plays the map, man.
That's right.
I don't feel bad for Hunters ever.
No,
When I say
you
that,
don't. You sure
Like
don't.
when Hunters were all sad, like last year, and they were like, "We're useless." I didn't care. I really didn't. They spent 3 years being the premier carry role.
It was a good time.
They don't get to complain.
They can complain some.
No, they can't.
All right, fine. Well, they can complain and you just don't have to listen. How about that?
That's fine.
We'll
Yeah.
vent. We're not used to it. We've been only childs, and suddenly we have to share, and they're not about it. You know?
Yeah, I don't feel bad for that. I really, you're right. You're allowed to complain. I just don't have to care about it.
Yeah,
That's such a Finch way to look at it. It's unbelievable, and it's still correct.
Exactly. I'm often correct, as EmilZy could be in some trouble. Knock up right there from Qvofred, but it's Qvo who takes a bunch of damage. Trixtank, of course, though, right on the mark. Scarab's Blessing gets him out of there, and I haven't spent enough time saying how good Trixtank is at Smite.
He's really good at it. His pick last game, I mean, I don't know how much of it was Trixtank necessarily, but the ability to walk down and end the game is only enabled by Fafnir.
Yes.
There. No other character ends the game for you like Dignitas won last game. So that alone was enough to do a lot for them, but another beautiful ult. Trix has continued to play well this set.
He absolutely has. Hey, Rod of Tahuti's second item on Zeus. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Hurriwind's been preaching this to me for a little bit. And it has its upsides. It really does. I mean, it is no character synergizes better with new Rod of Tahuti than Zeus does.
Right, because of Detonate.
I get you to 45% health, and then you go, how did he do that much damage to me with Detonate?
Yes.
It's because I have Rod passive. And so it's great on him. He also can sustain through the early game with his base damage numbers enough that it doesn't, but that big slow curve that you have by going Restored Artifact and then Rod of Tahuti, you don't feel it as much because your base damage numbers are still good enough in the early game where it doesn't end up hurting you quite as much as, say, it would on a character that is not Zeus. It's still dummy expensive.
Yes.
But it gets out of the way in your build because you want it eventually anyways. I think that critical in this style of build is what Hurriwind builds next. It has to be something cheap now. Because if you go expensive item into expensive item, you fall very far behind very quickly. If this is a Winged Blade here, and it's 1850, I've got 3 items in my bag, and I'm still dealing relevant damage because of Rod of Tahuti, and I've got more survivability, I really like it. If he goes Spear of Desolation here, I probably don't like it as much.
And ends up delaying his spikes up as opposed to Zyrhoes, who's gone the cooldown boots into Divine Ruin to try and cut out some of this healing that's coming through. Big ultimate, though, for Hurriwind. And adapting feeling the hurt a bit, but he makes it back on out of there, just barely.
Just barely is right, and that's enough to probably open up this Gold Fury a little bit. Hurriwind did get poked a bit in mid lane, and Vote's still here and healthy, so maybe not good enough for a Gold Fury pull.
Execute not there from Variety. Zyrhoes will eventually end up dying, but can they punish now this extra commitment Variety had to make? Qvofred goes to Vote to keep him away from the rest of the fight, and Ataraxia right there, airstrike aggressively to get him back in close. Vote doubles back towards adapting, but it's not enough. Ataraxia gets another kill, and the early game looking good, but this time for Dig.
Now they can go back towards gold, and Zeus still great at burning these objectives just because those extra auto attacks that you get, or the extra damage on your auto attacks when they have those extra detonate stacks. Great secure. Dignitas get it without another contest. And this much more early game focused composition between the Ratatosker and the Zeus is clearly catching Pittsburgh Knights a little bit off guard. Not that they're, immeasurably behind.
No, not at all.
But Vote's under more siege than he has been all set in the early game.
Yes, this is something that neither hunter has had to contend with just yet, and so finally Dignitas kind of put the screws to Vote a little bit and make him earn his way through this early game. Doug, if we can see these charts, we really can go to kind of your point, which is that things aren't immeasurably out of control here so far. It's 1,200 gold. That's almost entirely just the gold fury there because things are almost even before they got it. And then this experience at 3,000, that's more relevant 15.5 minutes in. But look at how it's spread out. It's almost just on Vote and Ataraxia.
Qvo has a slight lead in the jungle. Trix has a slight lead in support. But other than that, it is very even thus far. The big difference for me is I think that Trixtank is done with his Gauntlet of Thebes, whereas EmilZy has not been, is just now getting to the point where he's almost done. Also has a second relic. EmilZy just got his second relic. And the Blackthorn Hammer being completed and Mace 1 for Qvofred, that's a big difference in effective power level between him and adapting. Qvo actually has the entire gold lead on himself at this point. He's up 1,000 gold nearly.
That's right.
On adapting. So that of the 1,200 gold, 1,000 of that is built into your jungler. So now you got to be fighting around him.
Well, Vote's got to find a way to disengage. Has the ultimate there, but great beats from Qvo means the pressure can continue. There was none of this for 3 games in a row. Then all of a sudden, Qvofred won't let Vote breathe for a second.
That's the way to do it, man. You kind of lull them to sleep over there. Like, yeah, I would never come over there and gank you, man. No, don't worry about it. We want Ataraxia to get free farm just like you have. And they still want Ataraxia to get free farm. It's just they want the god as well as the minion this time in the lane.
Adapting, perhaps looking to gank this Achilles. They are rushing on over, and the tower's low, so some dive potential, but
he ulted him. Not
with Deathwalker this far back. He didn't seem to agree that there was much chance of them taking down Variety there. He is level 16 with that Blackthorn Glad Shield finish and Genji's for extra health. I mean, it would have been tough.
Though Variety did use Fatal Strike, so it's not like he got nothing of value from that Nemesis ultimate, but still not the kill potential you're necessarily looking for. It feels like Pittsburgh Knights are still built like they expect this game to go 40 minutes, and Dignitas are like, yeah, 29 sounds about right to us. They're looking a little bit sooner into the future to try and end this one with this type of comp.
I agree with you, but so far, Knights have at least held on close enough to where I don't think they got to worry about getting completely run away with or anything like that. They're going to keep it right around here. They don't want to let things get too much crazier than this in terms of the disparity, because like you said, then you do have this Zeus all of a sudden you can shut things down, and you can't keep up with this Rat's ultimates. All of a sudden they're barreling down mid. If they can keep it right around here, and they got a Merlin. I mean, they got a Geb in the late game and a Nemesis. They're not feeling too bad.
No, their late game composition is great for PK, but the Dignitas is playing it correctly, I think.
Yes.
You want to get a couple kills here and there, maybe invade a buff where we can, but let's hold off. I think waiting until the next Fury is the right idea.
Yes.
It looks like it's going to be a Primal Fury that'll open up the door for us to do Fire Giants much more easily, and Lord knows that both teams have needed Primal Furies this game. This is the right idea for Dignitas. Don't start throwing away your lead now. Take the fight where your lead can actually mean something, which is around the objective.
Exactly, and they should be able to fight around there, maybe even Pyromancer, or at least sneak them and make Pittsburgh Knights consider if they want to come over there and try and contest them. That's the kind of questions that you really want to be posing from this. We sometimes see those engagements happening a lot around buff invades too, though that hasn't been as big of a deal this time. It's been mostly just ganking Vote and seeing what we could do with him off the map for a little while. So where Dignitas wants to exercise this pressure, we should get that answer here shortly with Pyro up and the next Fury not too far behind.
Well, Deathwalker just watched Ataraxia back. He's playing Jingwei, so it's not as big of a deal, but a Blink Cataclysm in the mid lane, focused on the Trixtank. He ults himself just in time, is able to get that res off, but that's 2 ultimates and a set of Purification Beads pulled away by EmilZy, so good engage by him in the mid lane.
Fair, a couple ults used from Knights and the Blink as well, so maybe they're slightly less aggressive, but you're right, they've made this Zeus much more vulnerable, and maybe that does slow them down. If they were considering a Pyromancer play, maybe they're slightly less willing to do that now with Hurriwind not having that extra safety factor and a chance to lock him down. So this is nice from Knights to be able to find something to make Hurriwind feel less at ease.
He goes Divine Ruin. This is a cheap enough second item that I like where he's at in the build. At this position, that Enchanted Ring will probably turn into a Shaman's Ring.
That's
which
what I was thinking.
I love on Zeus. It's everything you want. It's power. It's a great passive for you. The movement speed is really helpful for you. Shaman's is a great item, and he stacks it in the blink of an eye in these team fights. So this is a good. I like Hurriwind's build path thus far. I mean, and the Rod of Tahuti hasn't really set him behind that much because Zyrhoes opts for a pretty expensive option in the Soul Reaver himself, and they're about even right now in their build path. So it's been totally fine.
Hasn't hurt him at all, except the difference is that Zeus has an item that's, what, 150 power, and then a pretty nice passive on the back end, too. So, yeah.
Yeah, seems good.
You're feeling good if you're Hurriwind, I think, about this point in the game, even though you did just have your beads forced out. He really has not been under that much duress so far, which is exactly what a Zeus would like throughout this early game, to get to the point where he can start dropping some of these big ultimates. The question then becomes, though, how well can Deathwalker, in adapting once these team fights do start breaking out, get back there and punish this Zeus? Deathwalker has not a ton by way of some magical defense, so maybe that's something he might want to look at.
Yeah, I don't think Runic Shield's going to be enough to let you dive
either.
Zeus for free. The fact that he's level 20 is the big thing. And
that's nice, yes.
The Aegis as well. That kind of does double duty against this composition for Dignitas. It stops detonate damage if you time it well, and Fatal Strike executes. Those are the two ones that you're looking to really immune with that Aegis amulet. Maybe Thorns might be the better call, where you just like ult on top of the Zeus. He has to drop ultimate to peel,
right,
and he can't stop that damage. He can't take it back once he drops it, and you can return some of that onto him. But with how little magical defense he has at this point, I think standing in the Zeus ult to return some of that damage might do more harm than good.
I am a bit surprised that he went with the Ankylo. I mean, this can be nice. Sometimes I wonder, though, because that Ankylo proc might happen too soon to stop detonate.
So now Trixtank's big thing is that he wants to proc that with Solar Flare from a distance, but
right,
it's less about detonate, I think, and more about you can't get abducted this way. As
yes,
soon as
it
that
definitely stops
abduct connects, now Trixtank is silenced, and so that's a big lockdown potential that Dignitas has potentially lost. It's now going to be up to Hurriwind and Trix to pop that on Chile early and often, but it's a pretty small internal cooldown, only 30 seconds, so you get that up pretty often.
He had a lot when he backed, didn't he? He was able to finish on Kile and pick up High to the Urchin, so that's a nice moment there for Deathwalker. And now the Knights, I imagine, do want to start doing some fighting because they can get these stacks online as well. And right to that credit, they start pulling this Primal Fury. They're not down a ton. This is certainly a fight they could take, and they're all in committed. Dignitas stripped the Primal Fury away. Lightning Storm came over the top as well, and that's a one objective for the boys in red.
Just feels like a weird call by Pittsburgh Knights, doesn't it? I mean, you either want the fight or the objective, and you aren't positioning to take the objective like that. You're positioning to take the fight. You're not zoning. You're not doing a whole lot of anything.
They're positioned for an easy leash, right? Is what that is. Yes.
Exactly. And so you don't get that opportunity, as Zyrhoes had to get away from trouble. Qvofred's going for him now in mid, but EmilZy's the focus on the right.
Zyrhoes does end up falling, and it's Vote who can try and punish, but can't quite lock down the rat, which means Qvofred makes it back out. And now Dignitas, with a Primal Fury, and this isn't even the enhanced version, can start turning towards this Fire Giant. Pittsburgh Knights may have miscalculated around that objective, and look at the damage Variety's putting out. Y'all gotta back off. Fatal Strike just for the damage, closes him into Votes, and nothing the Kurnos can do. Adapting, deleted as well. Ataraxia gets credit for it. A killing spree for him as they head back to the objective.
We've got 2 minutes before this thing ticks over, and we know what happens when it becomes enhanced. So they have to be worried about that, but Variety's doing a great job zoning. Deathwalker has ultimate, but they're not going to try and suicide for this one. Fire Giant goes the way of Dignitas. And that was just a great play from Variety in the mid lane. This whole fight opens up because Variety blinks on top of Zyrhoes and does half his HP. That opens the door for Qvo then to ult in and kill Zyrhoes, which keeps Vote distracted. They focus out EmilZy, got his ultimate chased out. And then it's just a free fight for Dignitas where they just pick and choose where they're going. Variety has just had a phenomenal game so far on this Achilles, and it may not look like it. He's 2-0-1, he's got top of the player damage charts, but it's solo lane, who cares? His impact in that last fight opens that whole door for Pittsburgh Knights. That's the equivalent of your back-to-back 20-yard chunk runs in the NFL,
right?
But your guard just blew up 2 linebackers and a lineman. You have so much space that it's easy for you to do whatever you want, and Variety created it all.
What a tough fight that was for Pittsburgh Knights, and it starts with this curious call on the Fury, right? I mean, it's hard not to want to come back to that and think what it was. I mean, I said before it that Urchin's complete and maybe you look for a skirmish,
sure,
but I don't know if you want to look for it quite that way. Like you said, it was positioned for a leash, not with someone zoning, not for the out-secure, especially not up against the Zeus. I don't know if Lightning Storm is what took it itself,
sure,
but it's so hard to out-confirm a team with that objective there, especially if you're not stopping them from walking up in any way.
Yeah, I mean, what's the benefit if they get it? Then Dignitas probably doesn't feel as confident going towards Fire Giant. It's just that Dignitas sometimes the coin flips are coming your way, and it feels like that's what's happening right now for Dignitas. But
right,
you put yourself in that position, right? You're putting yourself in the position to get the chance calls to fall your way, and it seems like Dignitas is just having that sort of day today.
Yes, it definitely looks like it's coming up Dignitas' way. But the thing that's curious is I don't know if the Knights needed to coin flip. behind, really. It was like, what, 3,000 gold or
Right.
so? So I'm just curious about the Knights' call there. But like you said, it's Dignitas who are the ones that forced them to make that tough decision. Now they're threatening this left side Phoenix. All of a sudden, these long games from the first two have faded away, and we're moving at breakneck pace here in games 3 and 4.
Tier 2 tower is an option. They thought about the left side Phoenix, but decided that was a little bit ambitious for this point in the game. Instead, let's get all the gold we can, pump this lead up even more as they get towards 73,000 gold so far in this game, and let Qvo just keep putting pressure all around the map. You want to 4-1 split is exactly what you're looking for from this position. They've got Fire Giant for a little bit longer. Shouldn't be too much longer, but enough that they could give their hand at 2 or 3 waves here on this left-hand side.
You're right. Keep Qvofred over there. I always say it's much harder to be a pick comp here. The game has simplified down. It's to just keep these Phoenixes standing, and we know where they're coming from. Trixtank takes over half his HP, gets pulled back in, never even gets to use the ultimate. Zyrhoes gets credit. Lightning Storm, though, cuts it all off. No way they can walk through.
Really good ultimate there from Hurriwind, and that was the Anchile showing up in a big way for Deathwalker there, because Trixtank looks to use Abduct on him, gets silenced, and is immediately in a horrible spot. It's just a little bit of an overextension there from Trixtank. Never gets his ultimate off, barely got the shell off in time. Just a bit too much from Trix.
And you okay saying that's the first time you've had to say that all day today? So
yeah, Trix making a mistake.
So I don't even know if you were ready yet for that one to come out. Yeah,
I know, and we'll see what Pittsburgh Knights can actually get off the back of Trix's first major mistake so far this set. Should be a tier 1 tower with some ease. I like EmilZy's Emperor's Armor pickup, kind of feeling the changing winds that there was going to be some sieging coming, so may as well get the thing that'll help us the most in that moment. But do the Knights have time to get this Oni Fury? Dignitas here in spades. Trixtank's coming back from base, but so is Qvofred.
Big decision point here. I don't know if they should stay on top of it. They're just going to try and burn it. This is a commit from their positioning, but Variety is happy to blink, and he goes directly for Vote. EmilZy half HP as well, but they actually blow him up. The rest of Dignitas aren't there. They turn their heads on a swivel, blow Variety up, and now they're looking good, but Qvofred crashing back in.
Knocks up a couple. Good immediate disengage from him, though, and that's enough. They force Knights back. Fire Giant's off of Dignitas, but that won't stop them from getting this objective. That's where that Nemesis ultimate is coming up huge, and Adapting used it on the Trixtank and killed him underneath left Phoenix. That time, Variety just can't go unanswered when he's getting into the back line like that, and Adapting playing Nemesis is the perfect character to punish that aggressive blink in from Variety, who still nearly killed Vote, by the way.
Yes, he very nearly got that kill. But this is the borrowed time the Knights needed to find somehow. This is exactly, I feel like, what they were looking for. Obviously, it'd be so much better if they were, wiping and such like that. But in a realistic world, this is about as good as you can ask for, where you get that kill under left Phoenix, you keep your Phoenix healthy and alive, and you're able to push out and find another pick on the Variety. This is all just time that Pittsburgh Knights need to get to the point where Geb means you can't kill Vote and Zyrhoes, and where Adapting can shred through Variety and Trixtank, and Vote has this pin auto attack build online. They're getting closer and closer to that.
But now Dignitas needs to be wary of what happened to Pittsburgh Knights last game, but also keep the pressure on, in my mind. Especially right now when you have Oni waves pushing in each of your lanes. Pyromancer should be very free from this position. No way Pittsburgh Knights want to contest that, but I think I'm pulling Fire Giant from this position if I'm Dignitas, because we've got Oni waves that need to be answered eventually by someone on Pittsburgh Knights.
And Dignitas are considering it. They're posturing around the objective, but don't want to commit to it just yet. Deathwalker is pushed back out, but it doesn't matter so much. Dignitas are not comfortable pulling this Fire Giant. It is the enhanced version. It is going to be more difficult for them to eventually burn it down, but this might be the best opportunity.
But this is fine still, because you're getting a buff invade on the left. I believe that's still an Oni wave in the left that just got pinged there, probably by Pittsburgh Knights. Doug checking in, and sure is. So Dignitas doesn't have to pull Fire Giant yet. They have to wait until someone shows up on that left-hand side to defend that Oni wave, and then that's when you pull Fire. You don't give Pittsburgh Knights the option to fight you when they're not under any pressure quite yet. Now the Deathwalker's back. You know he's got teleport?
Yeah, he's the best one.
But you still want to make him do it.
Well, Trixtank gets brought down to about half HP, though. I think that was the Thorns. Something was reflecting it, just the Nemesis shield. Doing enough to send that back their way, so Trixtank takes quite a bit there. And this is the point where the Merle can feel very good. We haven't talked much about him, but he's quite good at poking. maybe even to rival Zeus, but this is good. There's no tier 2. They can catch them out on the retreat. A nice knockup from Qvo and a stun. Vote is the target, but he's got plenty of backup coming his way. Lightning Storm isn't enough. But Dig have cut the Knights off. Maybe they can burn it quickly while they have to back.
You need Lightning Storm to burn in this position, especially with Deathwalker's teleport threatening. I feel like that fight was really, really perfect for Dignitas until Hurry used Lightning Storm. That's enough that Knights can come in and contest.
And they're stepping in enough for them to leash. They have to be careful they don't step too far forward. A fight without tanking up the FG is exactly what Dig want to take, and it looks like what they're getting. Qvo's low on the right-hand side, but EmilZy's the target. Abducted, pulled right back in, and it's Hurriwind the one that takes care of him. Now Deathwalker getting chunked.
Wow.
Nice autos from Ataraxia, and that forces out the ultimate.
Now this might be the window that Dignitas needed. This should be the Fire Giant now. I mean, Deathwalker still has teleport, and there's a ward right behind FG there that you can see next to the rock, but is that going to be enough? Primal Fury buff means that they can chunk through this much more easily than Pittsburgh Knights was doing in the last game.
No, he's not going to be able to come through. Dignitas grabbed the objective, and I think it's just a little bit too far forward. The Knights had forced Dignitas off without coming up to that sort of halfway line, that imaginary equator that sort of through the map, right? And when they cross over that, and Dignitas don't have to force them into that position by taking damage from the FG, that's the exact fight Dignitas wanted to take.
So now Enhanced Fire Giant means that, look, there's so much risk involved. We've seen it laid out very plainly so far this set. Games 1 and 2, tons of Fire Giant, elongated Fire Giant dances because teams are so scared to start tanking it up. Game 3, thrown because of a bad Fire Giant tank. But now we see the reward that Enhanced Fire Giant can provide. This is going to open up these Phoenixes very, very quickly for Dignitas, especially for full build on everyone on their team outside of Trixtank, who's just waiting to finish off that Mantle of Discord.
See where it is they look to push. They've got all kinds of time to get it done. We talk a lot about these mages when they're in the seed situation, how strong they are. Merlin feels like one who can do well defending from under Phoenix.
Very well. You just drop the Blizzard on the wave. You've got your Frostbolt to poke. You want to stay in Ice Stance a lot of the time here.
Yep.
And then Arcane, if they're running away or kind of in a middle fight, Arcane is great in the middle of chaos. Whereas if someone gets right on top of you, you can turn and burn with that Fire Stance.
And it's Trix who has to be real careful. They've proven already they can absolutely blow him up if he gets stuck at the front of this fight. So he is going to continue some of the excellence we saw from him earlier on as they bide their time. The Emperor's Armor glow is there. That's one more thing to consider in EmilZy's favor.
Trix is really trying to get that Unchile proc away from Deathwalker. That's why he's stepping in, taking some extra Phoenix shots. As well as Dignitas is likely waiting for Sprint to come back up. That's such an important relic against this Nemesis ultimate that you probably don't want to be forcing too much without it.
Well, Qvofred threatens the mid-Phoenix, whereas Dignitas dip their toe in the water on the left-hand side. They bring Deathwalker down to about half HP for the trouble. But adapting ults on the Qvofred, Qvo's out of there and hasn't really expended anything. Even though he's half HP, that's not bad at all.
Winged Blade, the MVP there for Qvofred. Left side Phoenix getting low as a polymorph pretty good. That forced actually the beads onto Hurriwind, who nearly kills EmilZy all by himself. Qvo and Variety there to clean it up.
That's 2 down already, and Dignitas have 5 up. Left side Phoenix has been burned to a crisp, and they turn their attention towards the middle lane. Deathwalker adapting and Vote all still here, all still healthy. They can do what they can to try and make a defense, but Dignitas kick the door open to the base.
Right side Phoenix, it's still healthy. Mid Phoenix, pretty close to half HP. Still plenty of relics on the side of Dignitas. Beads in, Blink still up for Qvo. Variety's taking a lot of damage though here from Vote, who still has Purification Beads. He's trying to turn and burn. Variety does fall to his Odibo procs, but Qvo still is able to clean up the Kerninos.
And that's a big res coming out from Trixtank, and I think that might be it. Hurriwind takes down, adapting way too much damage, and Dignitas answer all the questions up against the Knights looking pretty good. 3-1, they take the set.
Man, you just had that feeling right after that game 3 where Pittsburgh Knights choke it away. Dignitas end up coming here and looking really clean in game number 4. Hurriwind, Zeus on the money this time around. Qvo's early game pressure was great. Variety on the Achilles. Trix has a couple great reses as the game goes on. Ataraxia plays well with the lead. You need to be mentioning all 5 if you're going to end up winning a game this handily against a team like Pittsburgh Knights, but all 5 members of Dignitas, and Biggie as well, the coach. All
Yes.
6 members really, I think, had a great set here for Dig.
And this is what a best of 5 gives you that I don't think any other kind of set does, which is it gives you that game 4 where Dignitas just flipped the script.
Yeah.
Everything that they kind of conditioned the Knights into playing against 3 games in a row went out the window. Suddenly it was pressure early, and not just pressure early, but on Vote and Duo Lane, who'd been on an island the entire set, getting to just farm all to himself. Everything was different in game 4, and it looked like the Knights were kind of on the back foot that whole time. Though, that Oni Fury push still comes to mind, right? As much as they were on the back foot, it wasn't out of reach until around there, it felt like.
Yeah, again, that call to go to Oni Fury, are they looking for the fight there down 3K? Probably not. I think you're trying to bait Dignitas into a bad engagement and then hope that they mess up because they're trying to overcommit to Oni Fury. I think Dignitas' patience, which was on display a lot this set, really came back and helped them in that particular fight because they say, okay, well, we'll commit the Zeus ult. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. They end up getting it and poking out the opposition a little bit, and then they can transition over very easily over towards the right-hand side, and that kind of opened the door a little bit for them. I think the idea was okay from Pittsburgh Knights. It just felt like the execution may have been a little bit off, but sometimes you just lose those coin flips.
Sometimes it goes that way. I wonder how much, too, it means to Dignitas as a squad, right? Because like we talked about already, Zyrhoes used to be on that team. He leaves them to come over to these greener pastures, and maybe you wonder if it's greener just yet. It's a long, long season, but at least right now, the other 3 Dig boys got to be feeling pretty good. Let's get it back over to the desk, though. They got a big set to break down.
Man, when you want to talk about how this team felt after the fact, Taka and I walking to the soundstage out of the green room after the end of the game, and we start to mosey down when we see the push down the lane, right? Like, all right, this one's going to go the other way. And as we walk through the player hallway, just screams, noise. These guys were real loud about that win. I think Dignitas really happy about it.
And they have good reason to be. Pittsburgh Knights, no easy opponent to take down. And this, again, I think kind of solidifying Dignitas as our current #1 team for competitive play right now in Season 6.
Absolutely.
I think that this last game definitely came down to a full team effort, but every single one of the players for Dignitas had standout moments throughout this set. The synergy is definitely there for these guys.
Without a doubt, the core 3 players putting in 2 other guys to sort of fix what had been left. I think the Dignitas absolutely kind of has the skeleton crew, and then on top of it, the meat and the potatoes to really bring them the wins. Undefeated so far in the season. Qvofred certainly a big part of that, and this is what Finch was talking about. Really good analysis, saying they just flipped the switch right here, just turning everything around, and this was all about that early game pressure as compared to what we saw with the late game pressure in games 1 through 3.
And that's the thing, is that Pittsburgh Knights very much drafted as though this was going to be another one of those 45, 50-minute games that Dignitas and the Knights have been going back and forth with for games 1 and 2. Game 3 is really what kind of just broke things wide open for Dig, where they had a little bit more flexibility. But this changeup, and also I want to give huge credits to the drafting phase here from Dignitas, because they took Jing Wei and then a Ratatoskr afterwards, but I didn't even realize it in the moment, but that Jing Wei pick would have been the only reasonable hunter pick for Vote. And so for Ataraxia to take that, forcing him to either go aggressive hunter or, just kind of be left to farm, but Rat just has such a steep punish against
really
hunters, and Kerninos felt every single instance of that. Multiple tower dives coming through from Qvofred. He just played that Rat beautifully, and it might not have been top of the player damage charts, but he wasn't really meant to be the one finding all of the cleanups. Yeah, he was just there to play setup, man.
And I mean, when Hurriwind's going to hit 20,000, when Variety's going to hit 20,000, that's really all you need. Nice job from Dignitas as a whole. The entire team really brought it here in game number 4, which I think is really, really big. Looking at game number 1, team fight. Looking at game number 2, that's a different story. They lose that one. Looking at game number 3, again, largely team fight. And then game number 4, largely team fight. Dignitas has really walked away from the, well, Variety's our superstar, or Qvo's our superstar, or this guy's our superstar. And now I've just been like, well, all 3 of us, all 4 of us, all 5 of us can entertain the idea of being a star player. What if we all do it at once?
I also think that the set momentum definitely shifted more towards Dignitas after they got such a strong turn and burn for that Game 3 victory. Pittsburgh Knights definitely were not expecting to just lose the match in a matter of seconds because of that Fafnir. And I think if one thing there's a takeaway for all the other teams that might have been watching this set, which I highly doubt that any of them weren't, don't let Dignitas have Fafnir. That is a given right now.
Really interesting, the Jormungandr choices for Zyrhoes over there in the mid lane. Interesting that we didn't see him return to it. Had to go the Merlin, I guess. Had in the air quotes. But Jormungandr was really powerful in that mid lane, so much so that it had to be banned out. Game number 1 was all right. He kind of did it once, but didn't do enough to really secure the win. And then game number 2 arguably came from the power of being able to dive that backline over and over again. So when Merlin was available, it was interesting to see not the Jorm pick, but the Wizard.
And Dig just continuing to show that Pittsburgh Knights are indeed immortal. This roster might have 5-star players, but Dignitas are the ones who are truly looking like stars after that set play.
Variety and Hurriwind, they're the ones with the 20,000 player damage game 4. And they're the ones with the post-game interview. We'll talk to them right about now.
All right, guys, congratulations on your set win. Got to ask you first about Game 3. I mean, Variety, you in particular, had a bit of a rough one out there, but a huge turnaround. What happened in that fight?
The FG fight specifically was Deathwalker was trying too hard to zone our carries away from the FG while they do it, and then EmilZy was chasing around Fred in mid, so they had no one to tank the FG properly for them, and I think Trix walked in and seen the Trendabog's health, which was about 30%. And then that's when we knew like we could win this fight. It's like the now or never fight, and pretty sure Trix got like the most perfect, like the most beautiful hammer on a Hebo to stop his ult coming through to secure FG. I think we stole it, didn't we?
Yeah,
we stole it, and then we just ran it down mid.
Well, I guess for both of you, but I guess really you in particular, Hurry, what was it like going up against this Jormungandr in the middle lane? Because we really haven't seen it much. It seemed like a big pain in the neck. He was diving you a lot in the back. I guess just talk to me about dealing with that and eventually having to just ban it out.
Yeah, I think the first games we weren't really giving it enough credit. I think that we saw the objective problems they had. They had 4 people. They still couldn't do an objective. We were thinking like it has a lot of weaknesses, but then they came out with the comp with the Xibalanque, like full dive, and they just played it perfectly. So as a backliner, without your Aegis, you're just dead.
It's a lot of fun. It looks like you were having a great time out there getting Jorm ulted constantly.
Absolutely not.
Variety, talk to me about Trix in particular, because I think he played lights out this set. Did he really want to have a statement set up against Zyrhoes?
I think so, yeah. I think he was very calm about the whole situation. Even in Game 3, he was very calm. He made sure everyone was like on the same page of how we're going to play this and come back into it. He was constantly saying that it's not over yet. We can always win. But yeah, gameplay itself, he played phenomenal. Like that was it first blood in mid.
Yeah.
Where he stunned Hebo. It was, I don't know. He played the set of his life. He played amazing.
Well, congratulations again on that victory. Right now, man, you guys are just looking like the team to beat. So, get rest up for your next matches. And again, thanks for coming in to talk with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The Smite Pro League, brought to you by Skillshot, Hi-Res Studios, Titanforge, iNet, SteelSeries, and Respawn.